Okay, so I'm going to jump right in and give a little introduction here. I'm going to do a podcast today called Seeing Trump. I did a podcast last week called Seeing Biden. This week is Seeing Trump. I'm going to do a little intro here and explain again what the Common Ground Sound Project is all about. And currently I'm focusing in these podcasts on the book Glory in Warfare, which is just a part of the Common Ground Sound Project. But I found something this week in branding that I want to read to you because I was sharing this with a marketing partner, and I just want to read it to you. I feel like it really encapsulates in another way what this project is about. So it says, this project is a visual, auditory, and heartstring sensory journey through our patriotic past and current identity, which causes us to face the questions of who we are and who we are to become as commoners, family members, and countrymen and women. We need these questions asked at this time and answered in a new way more than ever for the benefit of every living generation and for the generations to come. So that's just a little blurb to tell you the heart of this entire project. And then I will also jump in with my forever disclaimer, which is I could be wrong, but, and that truly is my forever disclaimer. So there's the intro. Moving on to Seeing Biden. I'm going to jump into this. So the Lord uses lots of things to speak to me and to make me see things in the ways that he wants me to see things, and then share with others how I see those things. And that's a prophetic gifting or a seer gifting, a discernment gifting. Anyway, so something that the Lord uses a lot is movies and documentaries. I mean, he uses so many things to lay our eyes on things and to reveal things to us, to bring the spirit of truth into our situations. So the Lord led me several years ago to watch a series of documentaries about Trump. And in that, I believe that he revealed what I'm about to share with you. So this is what I saw, and I'll just cut right to it. I saw through this series of documentaries that Trump was already had some childhood wounds, as we all do. But Trump had been being treated by the elites like white trash from the wrong side of the tracks. And some of us have a hard time perceiving that because we perceive Donald Trump as rich, and has so much money. But up in that upper echelon of money and in the elites, where there's just mega money, he was being treated as if he was the white trash from the wrong side of the tracks. And he was not being accepted into that club. But at the same time, he was being used for his money. And I'm talking about the Clintons and so on and so on. He was used, his money was used, and here we go with gaslighting. He was being told what he, to some limit, he was being told what he wanted to hear about himself in order for them to get the money. But ultimately, he figured out he wasn't really one of them. He wasn't being treated as one of them. And there's a scene in one of these documentaries, and I can't even think of the names of them. Maybe I'll post that, maybe I won't. It doesn't really matter. But where there is a big banquet, and I'm pretty sure it's a political banquet, but the room is filled with elites. And what is explained is that he could tell, or it was just sort of known, silently known, that he was invited, he was on the guest list, but nobody really wanted him there. And he kind of knew that. And so he just went there. There's a saying that says, go where you're celebrated, not where you're tolerated. And so Donald Trump stepped over that line. He went somewhere where he's not celebrated, but he was tolerated. And you could feel that energy. And if you have any amount of discernment, you could watch the scene of this and you could feel that was going on. So not only did he go, but he sat in this big table, or they sat him there. I don't know if it was assigned seating, but he's sitting in this table right in the middle of the room. And Barack Obama is giving a speech that night. He's probably the main speaker of the night. And from the podium, and if you've ever seen Barack Obama walk, you can see that kind of has a swag, kind of a cool swag. And he kind of has a pretty snarky smile sometimes, And it has sarcasm in it. And so he's kind of doing that thing. And he's literally mocking Trump, kind of pulling it off as if it's acceptable, light, and in love and whatever. But everyone in the room can feel the tension of, there's no love in that. That's like yuck, you know? And so among people who are not believers, this kind of interaction happens. And among people who are believers, this kind of thing happens. And we all know what I'm talking about. So you can sense, or I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe that the Lord laid my eyes on that scene to see something that switched, that flipped in Trump in that moment. And it was, okay, I'm running for president, and you just wait and see. Okay, so that language that I just used, that energy that I just used is the energy of self-preservation, and it's the energy of personal vendetta. And so I'll talk more about that in a minute. So now I watched these documentaries after Trump was in office, so not before he was in office. So before he was in office, I continued to pray, like I talk about in the book. I continued to watch videos of all the candidates, and I continued to pray, Lord, let me see the truth of this. Let me really see the truth of this. And I just couldn't believe that Trump was rising up like he was rising up. I'm like, is this a joke? I was with everybody else. Like, this is not going to happen. And all of a sudden, the Lord laid my eyes on something, which was a picture of, and I've posted this picture before, but a picture of a bunch of people who were laying hands on Donald Trump, and they were praying. And I know most of the history of the people who were laying hands on him. And I will say this. The people who were laying hands on him in this, there were a few things I saw. The people I know they have a reputation of being people of the glory realm, which I talk about in this book. I talk about outside of the sea parting, manifest glory of God, coming to help us and save us in this country and in life. We're sunk. I mean, we always are, but in this current situation, political situation, we really are. We're down to, like, we can't play around. We need the sea parting, manifest glory of God to come. So when I saw these people who walk in that, they speak that language, they know that truth, they know that that is the truth, that those were the ones that were praying over him. And they weren't praying at a distance. They were crowded in around him. They were laying hands on him. And he had, I believe, his hands open. Maybe he didn't. Maybe they're crossed. He had his eyes closed, but he was in a posture of receiving. And I believe, I discern that even in the moment of that posture, it's possible that Trump himself, he was gaslighting, and he was just telling these evangelicals, and he was playing the game, and he was, just doing what they wanted. He was telling them what they wanted to hear. But he underestimated the power of those prayers. And if he did not already understand them, and I may be wrong because he might have already understood them, but I believe in the power of those prayers. And I believe there was a massive shift when that happened, when he opened himself up to actually not just throw people-pleasing words at him, say, yeah, y'all pray for me at your breakfast or your whatever, and cool, yeah. He really received them. It was a powerful visual that changed my mind about what was about to happen. So the problem is, and the problem has been, as I see it, as I believe the Lord has me see it, throughout Trump's administration, you saw two things happening, two things at work. And you can't serve two things. You saw, and I'll make that make sense in a minute, I think, but you saw personal vendetta operating, the energy of, and the spirit of, the attitude of personal vendetta, and the attitude and energy of the power of these prayers of glory. And what we really saw was kind of a double-minded man, and we saw kind of a confused man in that, because and there's a story that before he got in office, he called one of these ministers and said, I'm ready to say that prayer. Now, whether that story's true or not, I don't know, I wasn't there. But I don't doubt that. And so we all believers, we know that when you first accept Christ, there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to get free from. There's a lot to be healed from, And so as he was in office, which I believe was God's purpose, God's sovereign will, as he was in office, he was walking all that out. He's walking out sanctification and deliverance and freedom and healing. And at the same time, he was struggling with those attitudes and spirits of personal vendetta for the way these people had treated him. And so I really personally struggled. This isn't about me personally, but I personally struggled with things like his State of the Union addresses because there was a lot of personal vendetta going on in there. There's a lot of energy of that. And I believe that the prayers and that the Lord, I'm going to boldly say this, he was actually he anointed Donald Trump, to go in and save the people, not Donald Trump, but God, through Donald Trump, to save the people from the gaslighting situation we are all going through. So that's how I saw that. Now I'm going to pause here. I'm not going to pause, but I'm going to play something that I heard last week. And I just want us to soak it in, and we'll ask the Lord to show us how to put it in context here. But I want to play a piece of this, and I may fast forward in the middle of it. I'm not sure I can. Anyway, I just want you to hear the tone of this.
What if I told you that you can get whatever you want in life? Unbelievable, right? But it's true. You do have the power to get what you want. One of the biggest obstacles that stands in your way is other people, right? So in this audiobook, we'll show you how to undermine and get around other people with dark psychology. Now, the term dark puts people off. It is generally associated with evil. While the techniques in this book can certainly be used for evil, they are not necessarily evil in and of themselves. It all depends on how you choose to use these super powerful techniques of influence and mind control. The secrets contain...
I can pause. I'm going to pause right there. So I shared 8 things that I have come to know about gaslighting and gaslighters, because I didn't realize it, but I've been dealing with gaslighting since childhood. And about 7 years ago, the Lord really began to open my eyes and heal me in this area. And I'm still being healed, so please understand that about me. Let's listen again for just a second.
Contained in this book are not light. You can use them to gain control over anyone that you want. They are foolproof and very powerful.
Okay, so he said a minute ago that it all depends on how you use these techniques. That's gaslighting 101. Gaslighters believe, and the Bible covers this, I talked about it in last week's podcast, they believe that they're doing the right thing. They're doing a good thing, to the point that they're willing to use dark powers to do that. It's gaslighting 101. The enemy has convinced them they're doing the right thing. And so much so that it's okay to do it and get it by any means. That's really gaslighting 101. So let's continue to listen.
Powerful.
This tone just blew my mind.
When you decide to use these methods, you will experience very quick and successful results. You hold a great deal of power when you learn these methods. You will have access inside the minds of others. Once you gain this access, you will be able to do whatever you want with someone's mind. You can convince someone to believe you when you're lying. You can get someone to do what you want. You can even shatter someone mentally and emotionally, thus successfully winning a psychological war once and for all. In this book, some topics are extremely...
So in Glory and Warfare, I have stated that this is a spiritual war, but it's a psychological war against the socioeconomic status of the commoners of America. That's what we're battling right now. And so I want to stop and say this about Donald Trump. And I want to be very careful about how I talk about this. But we can all partner with the enemy in personal vendetta, in our woundedness. And we can begin to gaslight the gaslighters. And we can begin to just partner with all the same powers and principalities that are operating. So I want to say a few more things about gaslighting. So I talked about gaslighters the victims of gaslighting are very tempted to just gaslight the gaslighter, even for noble reasons, but it just doesn't work. The only thing that works is for Donald Trump, Jill Riley, all of us, to get plumb line aligned with the truth. The Spirit of truth is the Holy Spirit. The Spirit of truth will lead us in all truth, and the truth will set us free. So when we're working in the energies of personal vendettas, we're working in the energy of not love. We didn't return to love. We're not operating in love. We're operating in fear and again, personal vendetta. So another thing about gaslighting is that the gaslighter will often, this is just a typical pattern, but the gaslighter will often accuse the other person of exactly what they're doing. And the problem with this is they are convinced that that is the truth, because the gaslighter, through fear is a beginning root, and I talk about that, and also but the very bottom root of this is orphan spirit. And by that I mean you do not actually know and believe that God is your Father and you are a child of God. When you really know that, it's easy to return to love, because He is love. He is love. And when you know that and you're in community and an intimate relationship with God, who is love, then personal vendetta and all this language goes out the window. Okay, so that was the problem. The other problem, let me summarize the gaslighting thing. So I want to say that gaslighters, it's tempting, I'm repeating that, but it's tempting to gaslight the gaslighter. And I believe that Donald Trump inadvertently operated in some of that through this personal vendetta that he wasn't healed from. He wasn't free from that yet. So that caused a lot of problems during his administration, and it's why the left was scared of him and was very concerned about him, and I was concerned about that. And so the other thing about gaslighting, I guess the other point about gaslighting is that we have to come to understand that gaslighters, there's a blame shifting thing that goes on. There's two things that in operation. There is almost an obsessive self-defensiveness that the enemy's convincing you're not in the wrong, they're in the wrong. You're not in the wrong, they're in the wrong. And then there's this other obsessive thing of that blame shifting. And what the enemy is doing in that gaslighting to all the human beings. I'm going to take this down to George Stephanopoulos' book, which was titled All Too Human. It was a book he wrote about the Clintons. He titled it All Too Human. And that is the problem with all of us, with Biden, with Trump, with Obama, with whoever, with me, with you, is we're all too human. And we need the mind of Christ. We need to be in Christ. So there's these two things operating. The enemy is saying, you are not wrong. You are not wrong. And the enemy is saying, that other person is wrong. That other person is wrong. And then in the confusion, he will have the gaslighter actually accusing the other person of the exact thing that they're doing. So it's just a confusion of the enemy rattling around. It works so well. It's a tactic of the enemy. And I feel like it's important. I know people have talked about it, but it's important that we really have the Lord shed light on the truth of gaslighting. Because in last week's podcast, I shared this story about a skunk, about this man who hit a skunk, and then these other people behind him were hitting. Well, and I said, we've all hit a skunk. And that's what I mean. We have all run over the skunk of gaslighting in America and in the world. And so I'm just asking that the Lord would shed light on this and open our eyes to it. And mainly because of this, and I want to repeat this before I go to that. I want to repeat this. I do believe that Donald Trump was anointed and chosen by God to be positioned to be a vessel of the Lord to save us. So that's why so many of his decisions and behaviors or decisions and actions were actually aligned with the heart of a good father. This is what a good father, I talk about that in here. That's my delineation. You may be confused by my politics and go, I can't tell if she's on the left or the right or where she is. Well, it's because I'm not on any of those. I align with what I see to be the heart of a good father. And a lot of the things, many of the things that Trump did when he was in office I discerned that they were aligned with the heart of a good father, but it was a very confusing thing because this personal vendetta was still being run, right? But I do believe that Donald Trump was anointed and positioned to do things to be a vessel to help us all out of this gaslighting skunk that we've hit. And I'm not even trying to be funny there. So I want to bring it back to, again, return to love. And I want to talk about the inflamed. So because of the personal vendetta and the unhealed wounding of the way he had been treated by these people, there was a language, an inflamed language. And these kind of languages, let me just tell you, if you were to meet a group of 5 friends on the sidewalk today or at the grocery store today, and they were all in this mode of, they were all disappointed, and they were just talking about how bad things are. If 5 of them are all disappointed, they're all downtrodden, and they're all talking about this, and you try to enter that conversation, you are probably going to synchronize with their, I mean, we want to be the light, but what human nature has us just synchronizing. Before you know it, we're down there. So Donald Trump, in this inflamed, unhealed state, was a voice that echoed out. And we all came into this inflamed language. And if there's one point I really want to make today, it's that I encourage us all to pray over our inflammatory language. And when people say that's hate speech, it actually is. It's not love speech. It's not. We need to. We need to have an anti-inflammatory anointing. I'm sorry, I don't want to be goofy. And I want to confess this. If you go back to my TikToks about Biden's State of the Union, I'm totally talking in that tone. And I personally, I'll give you a personal testimony, and I said this last week, in dealing with gaslighting, I have personally failed at love in big, huge ways, and the Lord is healing me and pointing those things out. And a big part of where I fail is I get out of the language of love, and I get into this inflamed, angry, impassioned, and I think, so these same powers and principalities are convincing me. But my purpose in this is a good one, because I'm trying to be a vessel of God to save the people. And I'm just going to tell you, I have listened to some pastors, and I'm shocked because I feel like I know the heart of these pastors. I guess I'm going to name one. And I really believe the heart of this man is so good. His name is Dutch Sheets. But I listened to him sharing something a week or so ago where he was saying, you're going to look back at the decisions you made, talking about the left and talking about LGBT and all that, and you're going to make, and teaching that to young children, and you're going to see how stupid you are. And that might have been a little bit of exaggeration, but I'm telling you, that tone and language was coming out, and I think that we can all be guilty. I'm not just trying to beat up on one person here, but I think we can all be guilty. I know I can. This is a big problem for me. And so I'm not trying to shed shame or condemnation. I'm trying to encourage us as believers to ask the Lord and let the Lord come in and heal and cleanse, even with the washing of the word, cleanse those tones out. Because I said it last week, there is only one way that a gaslighter gets free, and therefore the victims of the gaslighter get free, and that is through love. Love, because gaslighting is rooted in fear. There's so much fear operating in us all, but specifically in Biden and in the left. And the only way is that perfect love would come and cast out all this fear on all of us. This fear is what's causing this division in America. And so, Lord, I just help me. I don't want to impart shame. That's not. I caught Dutch Sheets doing something that I often do, and he doesn't often do that. So I was surprised. I just think we can all get riled up and inflamed, and before you know it, we've aligned and partnering with the enemy. So, and again, I give my disclaimer to that one. I could be wrong, but I think that's what I saw in that video of him. So the whole point of all of this is we need to return to love. We need to rise up, wake up, pray up, and then speak up, and speak up out of the spirit and attitude and heart of this return to love for each other. So that's what I had today. I love you all. See you next time.